Welcome to Omega Bonda Stories. Let's begin.
I signed my name like I was signing away the last quiet piece of myself. The room smelled of polished wood and old power and the kind of certainty that makes breathing feel like permission. They called it an arrangement and they said it would protect me and they said I should be grateful because not every Omega gets offered protection with dignity. I kept my eyes on the paper because looking up meant looking at the alpha I was being handed to and I was not ready to let my fear meet his face. I had spent years hiding behind blockers and careful habits and a life built from small safe places. I told myself I could live as a nobody forever if I stayed disciplined enough. But one mistake in a crowded station, one stress spike, one thin day when my scent slipped and the wrong people noticed was all it took. The council found me like they had been waiting. Their smiles were polite and their words were gentle and their decision was already made. He arrived without ceremony. No loud entrance. No show. Just a shift in the air that made the room feel smaller and more still. Everyone stood. Even the men who thought they were important straightened like they suddenly remembered what fear tasted like. I did not stand fast enough and my guardian squeezed my elbow in warning. My body obeyed but my Omega flinched. I hated that part of me responded to power even when I wanted to resist it. They called him cold. They called him ruthless. They said he ruled through silence and that he never softened for anyone. When I finally forced myself to look, I expected a predator smile. I found a calm face and eyes that held nothing obvious at all. No hunger, no amusement, no cruelty. Just focus like the world was a problem he had already solved and he did not need to prove it. The contract was read aloud. Marriage, residence, public legitimacy. The council's protection in exchange for my name becoming his. I heard my life shrink into clauses. My throat went dry. Then I heard one line that made my heart stumble. No intimacy without consent. No scent marking without consent. Privacy rights guaranteed. I stared at the paper as if the words might change if I blinked. I glanced at him again. His expression did not shift. Yet something about those clauses felt like they had been carved there by his hand. I signed because the room had already been decided. I signed because refusing would mean being placed in a council facility with doors that locked from the outside. I signed because survival sometimes wears a ring. He did not touch me until the witnesses required it. When the ceremony ended, someone asked for a traditional wrist hold for the cameras. He took my hand for exactly as long as needed. His grip was steady but not possessive. When my pulse jumped, he loosened rather than tightened, as if he noticed my fear and chose not to press on it. In the car, he sat beside me without crowding. The city blurred outside the window, and I watched strangers live ordinary lives while mine slipped into a future I had not chosen. I waited for him to speak first because I needed to know what he wanted from me. His voice was low and controlled when it came. He said, "You are safe." He said it like a fact and not like a promise meant to convince me. He did not add a demand. He did not ask for gratitude. He simply said it again as if repetition could build a bridge. I swallowed and asked why he agreed to marry an Omega he did not know. He looked forward. For a long time I thought he would ignore the question. Then he said, "Because the council wanted you. Because you were not safe. Because I could stop them. Stop them." The words hit like cold water. I asked why they wanted me. His gaze slid toward me. It was not soft. It was not cruel. It was simply attentive in a way that made me feel seen against my will. He said, "You do not know." I did not answer because I did not know what he meant. When we reached his estate, I expected gates and guards and a feeling of being owned. There were gates, but the guards did not look at me like property. They looked at him for instruction and he gave none. The house was large but quiet. It did not feel like a trap. It felt like a place built for control and someone had chosen to use that control gently. A woman named Mara greeted me. Her eyes were kind. She told me my rooms were prepared. I hesitated at the base of the stairs and stared down the hallway where his footsteps faded. The ring on my finger felt heavy. Later he came to my door and stopped outside it. He did not enter. He asked if I had eaten. He asked if I needed medical care. He said there would be a public appearance in 3 days because the council would not release their grip without proof. He said I could choose the dress. I could choose the distance. I could choose the words. He would handle everything else. I wanted to laugh at the idea of choice inside a forced marriage. Still, my chest loosened in a way I could not explain. I told him I would attend. I told him I would not pretend to be happy. He paused. Then he said, "You do not have to pretend. You only have to be safe." That night, I lay awake listening to rain on the windows. My blockers burned in my throat. My mind replayed his voice and his stillness and the way he never tried to step over my boundaries. I should have felt only fear. Instead, I felt something more confusing. A strange relief that someone powerful was near and not using that power against me. On the day of the appearance, Mara helped me dress. When I came downstairs, he waited at the bottom of the stairs with his hands behind his back, as if even his posture was careful. His gaze lifted and met mine for a quiet second. Something in my Omega shifted. Not desire, not warmth. More like recognition that scared me, because recognition is the first step toward attachment. He offered his arm. I took it because cameras were waiting and because my body was trembling. The moment my fingers rested against his sleeve, my breathing slowed. My instincts reacted as if he were a shelter. I hated that my body trusted him faster than my mind could. The council hall was full of bright lights and sharp eyes. Alphas and betas watched us as if evaluating the value of what he had acquired. My sense stayed contained, but stress made it restless. I felt heat try to rise in my skin like a warning flare. I pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth and held my posture steady. He said almost nothing. Yet whenever someone's gaze lingered too long on my throat, he shifted half a step so his presence blocked their line. He never touched me in a claiming way. He simply positioned himself like a wall. The effect was immediate. People looked away. The room learned to behave. A councilwoman approached with a smile too polite to be kind. She congratulated him. She asked if I was adjusting. She asked if I had been trained for the role of spouse. My stomach tightened. Before I could answer, he spoke. He said, "My spouse is not an ornament." He said, "Speak to me if you have questions." He said, "Do not interrogate him." The councilwoman's smile faltered. I stared at him because the correction was small, and yet it felt like someone placed a hand over my heart to steady it. Later, an aide tried to separate me for a private welfare interview. My pulse spiked. The alpha's arm stayed linked with mine. He asked for the request in writing. The aide insisted. The alpha said no. No explanation. No raised voice. Just not that carried enough authority to make the aide step back. When we left the hall, my knees felt weak. The car doors closed and the silence inside the vehicle felt thick with things I did not know how to say. I should have been angry that I belonged to him. I was angry. Yet I was also shaken by the way he defended me without demanding I perform gratitude. Back at the estate, I went to my room and locked the door out of habit. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood and tried to find my center. My blockers suddenly felt thin. Fear and adrenaline had stirred my Omega too hard. I could smell myself under the suppression like warmth under ash. I reached for the emergency spray and my hands shook. A knock came. One soft knock. Not a demand. His voice came through the door. He asked if I was all right. I swallowed and said yes, even though it was a lie. He did not push. He said, "I can call the doctor if you want." He said the council will try again. He said they are more interested now. Interested in what? I asked and my voice cracked. His answer was quiet and careful. He said they think you might be someone I would protect at any cost. I stared at the door. My breath caught. The words sounded like obsession. It should have scared me. It did scare me. Yet the way he said it carried no possessive thrill. It sounded like responsibility he accepted without complaint. I asked why he would protect me like that when I am only a contract. There was a long pause and then he said, "You are not only a contract." My heart thumped hard enough to hurt. I pushed my back against the door as another wave of heat rose unexpectedly. My sense spiked. It was subtle, but it was there. A sweet Omega note slipping out under stress. On the other side of the door, his breathing changed. Not in hunger, in awareness, in restraint. He asked for consent to come in. The question hit me like a blade. Consent was a word alphas used when they wanted to seem kind. But he asked it like it mattered. I said no. Not because I feared him. because I feared what my body might do if he came close. My Omega wanted comfort. It wanted shelter, and that need felt like betrayal. He accepted my no without hesitation. He said, I will sit outside the door. He said, I will not enter. He said, I will not let anyone else come near you. He said, breathe with me. I slid down to the floor. Heat rolled in waves through my abdomen and thighs like fire under my skin. It was not explicit. It was not a desire for a body. It was a desperate instinct to be safe, to be held by something stronger than fear. He did not touch me. He did not ask for more. He spoke in calm, low phrases. Drink water. Count me. In through the nose, out through the mouth. He asked if I had suppressants. I said yes, and he told me how to take them safely. He stayed present like a lighthouse. His silence between instructions felt protective rather than empty. Hours passed. The worst eased. Exhaustion settled heavy in my bones. I lay on the bed with my cheek against the pillow and listened to his breathing outside the door like proof that someone remained. When dawn softened the sky, I finally whispered, "Are you still there?" He answered immediately yes. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I did not understand why that single yes felt like being chosen. Later that day, the doctor arrived quietly. She checked my vitals and frowned at my blockers. She said stress can trigger heat even under suppression. She said constant suppression can harm an omega. She asked if I felt safe in this house. I did not know how to answer because safety had always been temporary for me. Still, I thought of the night he spent on the floor outside my door. I thought of the way he asked for consent. I thought of the way he never used my vulnerability as leverage. I whispered yes. After the doctor left, he remained in the hall. When I opened the door, he did not step forward. He waited as if he would not enter my space unless invited. I stared at him. In daylight, he looked even more controlled. Yet there were faint shadows under his eyes. He stayed awake for me. Something in my chest tightened with guilt and something else softened with gratitude. I asked why he did that. He said, because you asked for distance and you still needed protection. He said, because your fear is not an inconvenience to me. He said, because I will not let anyone take you while you are vulnerable. The words should have made me feel owned. Instead, they made me feel like a person being guarded. I asked again what the council wanted from me. This time he answered. He said they believe you are unregistered. He said your file was altered. He said when you were younger your scent profile was flagged as rare. He said they have been searching for an omega whose bond signature matches a certain alpha line. My stomach dropped. Bond signature. Rare. Line. The words sounded like a story I did not want to be part of. I told him I had never been bonded. I told him I had never even been claimed. He studied me and something sharpened in his gaze. Not anger. Realization. He asked what your last name was before you changed it. My throat tightened. I did not answer at first because that name belonged to the life I ran from. But his patience held. I told him. His stillness shifted. For the first time, I saw something like emotion cross his face. It was brief, but it was there. A tightness around the eyes. A tension in the jaw like he was holding back a storm. I asked what. He exhaled once. Then he said that name was on a sealed list. He said it belonged to a family tied to his bloodline. He said the council believed the omega on their list was meant for him. He said he refused to let them hunt you because he recognized something the first time he saw you. My heart pounded. I whispered, what did you recognize? He stepped one pace closer and then stopped as if stopping was deliberate. His voice dropped even lower. He said, my alpha recognized you as mine. Mine. The word struck deep. My omega flared in response like it had been waiting for that truth all along. Fear and relief tangled together. I shook my head. I told him I was forced into this marriage. I told him I did not choose him. I told him I did not want fate deciding my life. He listened. Then he said, I know. He said that is why I put consent into the contract. He said that is why I keep my distance. He said I will not let the bond become another form of captivity. He said I will prove with time that being mine does not mean you lose yourself. He said it means you finally have someone who will stand between you and the world until you can stand on your own. The truth hit me like a turning point I had not prepared for. The cold alpha was not cold to punish. He was controlled to protect. He was ruthless to everyone else so he could be gentle with me. And that made my chest ache because it meant he had been choosing restraint every moment since the contract. The council did not wait long. 2 days later, they sent a summons to review the marriage under Omega welfare and bond legitimacy. I felt the old panic rise. The idea of strangers examining my scent and my body and my choices made me sick. He did not let the fear sit alone with me. He came to the sitting room and placed a folder on the table. He said, "I have lawyers." He said, "I have documentation." He said, "You will not be questioned alone." He said, "If you want to end the marriage, I will still protect you and I will help you disappear somewhere they cannot reach." I stared at him. End the marriage. The offer should have made me run. It did not. Because somewhere in the days since the night outside my door, my instincts had begun to settle near him like a bird returning to a branch. Not because he trapped it, because he made it feel safe enough to rest. I asked what he wanted. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I want you to choose me freely." He said, "I want the bond to be something you can accept without fear." He said, "Until then, I will treat this as a shield and nothing more." My throat tightened. I could not give him love. Not yet. But I could give him honesty. I told him I was afraid. I told him part of me wanted to trust him. I told him it terrified me that my Omega responded to him like home. His gaze softened in a way I could barely recognize. He said, "Then we move slowly." He said, "We build trust like a house built one brick at a time." He said, "You will always have a door you can lock." At the council hearing, the lights were bright and the room was colder than it needed to be. People watched us as if waiting for a crack. He stood beside me with calm authority. He did not speak over me. He did not answer for me. He placed the power back into my hands without abandoning me. When they asked if I was coerced, I said no. When they asked if I was safe, I said yes. When they asked if the bond was real, I felt my breath hitch. I looked at him and saw patience, not pressure. I told them the bond exists, but I am not claimed. I told them I will not be forced. I told them my spouse respects my consent, and that is why I remain. The room went quiet. The councilwoman tried to smile. She said bonds require completion. She said Omegas like me become unstable without it. He spoke then. One calm sentence that ended the discussion. He said he will not complete anything unless I ask. He said stability built on coercion is not stability. He said it is harmful. They could not argue against him without showing their cruelty. They postponed their ruling. They left with clipped politeness. When we got back to the estate, I breathed like I had been underwater. He stood in the entry hall and waited as if giving me space to decide what the next moment would be. I slipped the ring off my finger and set it on the table. My hand shook. He watched without offense. He asked, "What do you need?" I whispered time. I whispered patience. I whispered to be seen without being taken. He nodded. He said, "You have it." That night I stood at my window and looked down at the quiet grounds. The air felt softer. My body felt calmer. I realized the forced marriage that began as a cage had become a shield because he chose to make it one. And the bond that frightened me began to feel less like fate controlling me and more like fate offering me a safe place to heal. I did not know when I would be ready to accept him. I only knew that the cold alpha who discovered my secret did not use it to own me. He used it to protect me until I could protect myself. And in that gentle space between his silence and my fear, something slow and real began to grow.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more emotional stories.